Now that we are 2 games into this series, it is safe to say that Nintendo has something really special on their hands. Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga set an awesome precedent for a memorable Mario RPG that you can take on the go. And while Partners in Time often gets saddled with a meh status nowadays, it was still a really solid follow-up and a novel use of the DS's 2 screens. Not the touchscreen though. That part sucked. That one went for a darker tone, which was admirable, but I just don't think they went far enough with it. It was still a fun ride though, you know, aside from Baby Peach crying a lot. What more can you really ask for, truly? Oh, and also, totally forgot about this. It uses the DS's Rumble Pack. Raise your hand if you forgot the DS had an official Rumble Pack. Yeah, I think everybody just did. So then, after 2 successes, what's next?
Bowser, that long-time bad guy, really does suck. And I mean that in a good way.
I'm gonna miss that, man. That was E3 2009, and outside of that amazing out-of-context clip, there's really nothing all that interesting about the pre-release hype for this 3rd game in the series. Well, outside of Japan at least. Dude, look at that title! 3 exclamation points? Truly exciting times. Things definitely did feel a bit different this time around. The previous titles were fun little adventures that ticked most of, if not all of the boxes required to make an enjoyable portable RPG. But for the 3rd entry in this series, it seemed like it was going to be a whole lot more ambitious. You're not just playing as Mario and Luigi, but Bowser too! Finally, after so many years and only a couple of small instances, the big bad spiky turtle finally has some time to shine as a playable character. And as for those famous brothers that the name of the series is based off of, well, they adventure inside of that big bad spiky turtle. Bro, what? On the surface, this is already one of the most interesting concepts in the entire Mario series, and I know that opinion is shared by many people. While Partners in Time is now considered to be one of the weaker games in the series, Bowser's Inside Story is considered one of, if not the best, and you can tell its quality because 1 generation later, we would get a full-on remaster, and boy, we'll get to that. Nintendo! These openings always fill me with joy. Man, I've always loved this title screen jingle too. Same thing, man, it is just so joy-filled. The music is really catchy, you can mess with the water on the touchscreen, it is awesome stuff. Remember that I said this. The plot this time around is pretty strong. Probably the most notable thing about it is that we actually get a lot of spoken dialogue from both Mario and Luigi. And it is absolutely incredible. But fine, the actual story itself. Uh-oh. Toad got fat, so a mysterious disease, the blorbs, makes any toad it infects super thick. And during a board meeting to discuss how to handle things, Bowser breaks in, fails, of course he does, and Peach can do this apparently. And also introducing your new partner for this adventure, Starlo. You remember Stuffwell from the last game? Yeah, I didn't think so. Basically, Starlo is your new helper now, and she's pretty cool. I mean, hey, Starlo got a spot on the box art. Stuffwell didn't get that, so I think we know which one's better. Naturally, after being jettisoned out of the castle, Bowser is very upset. And in his despair, he stumbles upon a salesman that gives him a special mushroom that gives him the superpower of massive suck.
Really does suck.
Bowser returns to where he initially failed, inhales absolutely everything in the room, and then passes out, beginning one of the weirdest adventures in the entire Mario franchise. So like now Mario and Luigi are inside Bowser for most of this game, and Bowser never knows, he just hears voices coming from inside himself, but he never learned that it was Mario and Luigi, his heated rivals. This story is amazing. Mario and Luigi was already known as a comedy RPG, but nothing gets wackier than this. On your quest to solve the mystery of the blorbs, Bowser is the one who gets to explore the world, while the two brothers, once again, travel inside of Bowser and manipulate all of his insides to make him more powerful, as well as take out any obstacles that I guess realistically could kill him. This bug is just sitting on one of his pipes. I feel like that would be a really bad trip to the hospital. Uh-oh. Now Bowser got fat, Actually, Mario gets fat too, with like a direct airflow into his nose. And Luigi gets fat too with the new special move. I think Alpha Dream had a very common interest with their characters in this game, and I don't really know how to feel about it. One of the best parts about this game is it went all out with the idea of, let's travel inside Bowser and have things that kinda make sense in that context. Like inside Bowser, we get to fight Goombas that are based on cells, while outside, Bowser gets to deal with Goombas that are based on being chubby. We also get this pretty good new antagonist with Midbus. He's like this pig equivalent of Bowser. Pretty cool. We get assistance from a block person who needs help finding his block cats, and by doing so you get to take on the help of his block dog. And then there's this really creepy block woman who somehow made it into a rated E game. And you even get to travel to Bowser's... Oh no. The storytelling and the pacing of said story is excellently handled, constantly throwing you into new locations, introducing new interesting characters, and those locations you find yourself in are a lot more unique as well. One of the areas, Plaque Beach, is just a sand paradise made out of teeth, and one of the enemies here are Pokies made out of teeth. This is a very stark contrast to the more low-key and sometimes very messed up nature of Partners in Time before it, and it is very appreciated. We even get introduced to 3 of Bowser's minions with actual names and titles. There's Sergeant Guy, Corporal Paraplunk, and Private Goomp, featuring way more unique characteristics than Paper Mario has been willing to dish out lately. They're not major players in the story by any means, but we now have brand new characters to associate with this specific subseries. I think that's really cool. But easily, the best part of the entire plot is, of course, the return of Fawful as the main antagonist. He was already a fan favorite in Superstar Saga for his mannerisms, and he did have a cameo in Partners in Time, which was pretty cool, but being the main villain now, that just makes perfect sense. But the really shocking thing is having actual continuity in a Mario game. This rarely ever happens. Usually every game in this franchise is a unique tale, for better or for worse. And having a returning character show up for more than simply being fan service is awesome. And his motives are revenge. And thanks to the Toads now being all fattened up, and also brainwashing the majority of Bowser's minions, his ultimate goal is to harness the power of the Dark Star and take over the kingdom. He's still inherently a pretty funny character, putting that big dumb grin on everything he now owns, but his more nefarious side also feels really fleshed out here, making for just an overall awesome bad guy. And actually, when looking back at Superstar Saga 3DS's mediocre Bowser's Minions mode, the story within actually introduced new lore that showed that Fawful was planning to betray Cackletta and become the ultimate bad guy all along. Some of those Fawful robots you find at the tail end of Bowser's Inside Story, he already had those in development back in Superstar Saga. It is the only part of that mode that isn't total garbage. And boy, are we ever gonna touch on this topic later. The story evokes that same adventurous vibe that Superstar Saga had. We have new locations, new characters, a compelling villain, plenty of comedic moments. It's all there with the added element of
Bowser really does suck.
God, I really am gonna miss that man. Rather than trying to be an upgrade to the playstyle that the previous 2 games had, Bowser's Inside Story strives to follow the same vibe while also making things feel very different. Like for Mario and Luigi, their segments play out as side-scrollers. That same level of exploration is still there, occasionally throwing in some platforming, as well as running into plenty of battles featuring the same tried-and-true battle system that we're used to. But the main difference is in the perspective, as well as the aesthetics, really making this feel totally unique. There's a bunch of minigames that pop up from time to time as well, as ways to improve Bowser's abilities, and none of them feel forced or out of place. Some of them use the touchscreen, and they are a much better use than the one scenario where you used it in Partners in Time. They are perfectly, for lack of a better word, digestible. And there's also a sweet music track that plays alongside them. I love them so much. It ramps up as you get near the end of the minigame, and it's so good. And not only that, but they're also a great use of the 2-screen setup as well. Actions from the brothers on the bottom screen affect Bowser in the top screen. It is so much more of a natural use of this style than, again, what Partners in Time did. That extra space does come into play with the battles once again, but it is a whole lot less common. And as for the battles themselves, well, There really isn't anything going on here that's different than before. Jumping, swinging your hammer, using special moves, leveling up, and allocating points to specific attributes, it's all here, and it's all enjoyable. The special moves are handled differently though, in my opinion, the best way the series has done them yet. Sorta similar to getting them through the story as extensions to your natural abilities, you unlock these moves by finding attack pieces spread throughout the areas that you explore. In essence, it is kinda the same thing, but I do think the method of getting these pieces is a bit weird. Sometimes you get multiple pieces from a single block, sometimes you get all of them in one go, and at that point, I don't know, you may as well just find the move in one box and call it a day. But regardless, they are back to being performed with special points instead of an item inventory like in Partners in Time, so that immediately makes this way better, and you can all rest easy. Any chance of getting early stage carpal tunnel is no longer a concern. Throwing fireballs is nowhere near as painful, and my wrists are very thankful. And need I remind you once more, Luigi gets fat, but then we have the star of the show, Bowser. Now this is where you get to explore all of the nooks and crannies of the Mushroom Kingdom in a totally different way. You can throw heavy punches, breathe fire, roll into a spiky ball of doom and move about your leisure, even climbing walls. It's awesome. It may be slower, but he is a very satisfying character to play as. And it's the same thing for when you're battling as him. These play out basically the same, but there are very different ways to approach attacking and defending. Those punches you can pull off, oh, they feel so damn powerful, dude. It's awesome. This battle system is great. You even have the option to inhale your enemies during these. Sometimes it simply affects the tide of battle, but sometimes you bring an enemy inside of Bowser for the bros to take down, which is such a smart use of an absolutely insane idea. And as for the special moves for Bowser, these utilize groups of minions that you free from their cages throughout the adventure. I'm not really sure why you get a special move from only hitting one of these boxes here and multiple inside of Bowser, but here we are. And all of these moves actually use the touchscreen, and I don't know about you, but I do love me some sporadic touch controls in my DS games, even if it's an RPG where no one asked for it. These moves are very satisfying to pull off. They deal a lot of damage too, so it's really a win-win all around. Look at this big old clump of Goombas. I don't know, man, I just think that's pretty funny. I want my own clump of Goombas. This combination of the slower, more powerful style of Bowser perfectly contrasts the slightly quicker, more acrobatic style of Mario and Luigi. And near the end of the adventure, you do actually get to explore the Mushroom Kingdom as the bros proper, which lets you get into a bunch of secrets that you've stumbled across along the way that you couldn't access with Bowser. So really, all of the bases are covered here. This would also be the first time in the series we get introduced to a special battle gimmick. A few times throughout the story, Bowser gets really big. Alpha Dream really couldn't handle themselves, and I for one am uncomfortable. You turn your DS sideways, and now we get to take part in a massive gimmick battle. And these are just alright, in my opinion. All of the options you have available to you are so easy to pull off, and none of it really requires any strategy. It's definitely cool visually, and when it comes to having memorable moments, here we are, Bowser's fighting a building, but gameplay-wise, this offers very little substance. This would, however, start a trend of gimmick battles that the following two games would implement as well, so all things considered, on their first attempt here, it's fine. Nothing all that great, but it's fine. But in some really good news, unlike Partners in Time, we have substantial side quests to go for as well. Minigame score challenges, completing puzzles, boss gauntlets that lead to a hidden boss fight, beans. Again, there's even an entirely optional boss fight with some shroobs. It turns out that some of them were actually frozen in Bowser's castle after the events of the last game. Dude, I still can't believe the continuity this game is sticking to. That's so cool. I went and fought them before doing the final boss, so they were a total cakewalk, so that battle didn't really last more than like 20 seconds or so, but still, it's pretty cool. All of these things combined, this is just all awesome. Partners in Time felt like a stripped down adventure with nothing else to really distract yourself with. But Bowser's Inside Story is not only way more fleshed out, but there is a ton of side stuff to do as well. Ultimately, this is why Bowser's Inside Story is so good and Partners in Time kinda falls flat. They both have very interesting concepts, but while Partners in Time never really reaches its full potential, Bowser's Inside Story takes an absolutely ridiculous idea and goes far beyond anything you could possibly anticipate with You're going through the insides of Bowser. What are we doing here? I'm sorry, I just can't believe someone at Nintendo was like, we should put Mario and Luigi inside of Bowser, and then it became one of the best RPGs in the franchise. I can't believe that's reality. I gotta give a special mention to the game's overall presentation because man, the art style and the soundtrack are so damn good. This might come off as hyperbole, but in my opinion, this is one of the best looking sprite-based Mario games ever created, and the music is absolutely incredible, some of Yoko Shimomura's best work by far. And it's not even like the sprite work is simply really good and that's it, but every character in this game is so expressive and full of energy, and the use of the dark outlines makes everything pop out so well, whether you're playing it on a real DS or looking at direct capture footage. It all looks great. This is all I really want when it comes to my Mario RPGs. Personality. Like, easily, this is my favorite interpretation of Bowser ever. I love the more jokey side that we get with games like this and Thousand Year Door, and while sometimes Bowser can be this threatening menace who is Mario's main rival for a reason, sometimes he can also just be a big ol' lovable meatball, and his design here and his mannerisms complement that perfectly. Again, remember I'm saying these things. And now it's time to approach the final moments of the adventure. On Mario and Luigi's quest to create the miracle cure that solves the Blorb crisis, Fawful and Midbis manage to awaken the Dark Star, infecting Bowser in the process. This was all done so the star can absorb Bowser's DNA and replicate his body. And despite the Mario Bros' best efforts, it succeeds. And to make matters even worse, once Dark Fawful is dealt with, because he turns dark and subsequently kinda scary looking, he turns into... oh god, a weird spider thing. Gross. But with their powers combined, Dark Bowser is complete. It does seem kinda cliche to simply have a darker form of Bowser as the final boss. I mean, hell, we already got this in the previous 2 games, but the build up to it all, witnessing the corruption of Fawful, getting to see how threatening the Dark Star can actually be, it is, in my opinion, the best implementation of this idea yet. It all takes place in a corrupted version of Peach's castle as well. Again, an idea that we just saw in the last game, but I think it is handled way better here. Everything has been Fawfulized. Those smiles are all terrifying. And then, yes, of course, we have the final battle against Dark Bowser. You know, it's only like the most defining moment in the entire franchise. Honestly, it's kind of perfect. The location high up in the castle is great. The music is unnaturally fantastic. Like, holy cow, I did not think a game like this would have music this epic, but here we are. Pitting Bowser essentially against himself makes for a really engaging boss fight, and then by inhaling the Dark Star bug from it, Mario and Luigi get involved as well, doing battle with Fawful once again, in his much more twisted spider state. There is so much going on here that is just so damn good, and unlike the difficulty spike that we have with Cackletta, or with how long it takes to deal with Princess Shroob, this battle with Dark Bowser and Dark Fawful, it's handled perfectly. Once you take out Dark Bowser for good, Fawful has one more trick up his sleeve, blowing himself up from within Bowser to bring everyone out with him. Instead, this just gets everybody finally out of Bowser's body for good, and peace has been restored to the lands. For everybody except Bowser, who finally sees that it was Mario and Luigi within him the entire time. And oh, he's not very happy about it, so now he's gotta do what he's gotta do. Mario, Luigi, and Bowser all do one more battle as the credits begin to roll. And it looks like Bowser lost said battle. All is right with the world. But hey, the princess sends over a cake to make up for that, or something. I don't know, the main hero of the game gets brutalized and then that's the happy ending. What a way to go out. Maybe it sounds like I'm exaggerating here, but this game is as close to a perfect Mario RPG that you could possibly get. Bowser's inside story walks that fine line of cartoony humor and serious overtones so damn well, without either of them ever feeling forced. The art style is fantastic, the music is so good, the combat is super satisfying. Maybe some of the later battles go on for a bit too long, but that's pretty minor in the grand scheme of things. This is kind of the perfect Mario RPG. I know people tend to give that title to Thousand Year Door, and that's totally fair. Both of these games overwhelmingly succeed in the tone, atmosphere, and all of the mechanics they set out to achieve. They are both, in my opinion, the best that these two series have to offer. With this game, the Mario and Luigi series transcends being that portable equivalent to the console Paper Mario games and becomes a franchise that is worth keeping your eyes on. And then they released a remaster like 10 years later to a resounding... why? Okay, so Superstar Saga getting a 3DS version made total sense in my opinion. People were super nostalgic for it, you couldn't play the game on that console, there were plenty of quality of life changes that needed to be addressed as well, and I mean, yeah, some people aren't all that keen on the art style, but overall, I think it's a great way to experience that game. But you can already play Bowser's Inside Story on a 3DS due to the backwards compatibility. Who was asking for this? I already went over this in the entire video, but that game was already damn near perfect. Partners in Time is the one that needed fixing, but okay, here we are, Bowser's Inside Story plus Bowser Jr.'s Journey. Great. You know that bad Bowser's Minions side game from that last remaster? Well, we got a sequel to it here. And it's still not good. So that's... something. They do throw in some brand new characters that are exclusive to this story, so that's kinda neat, but it is still so unfun that I doubt anybody will ever get the chance to see them for themselves. But fine, what about the main Bowser's Inside Story portion of this package? Well, essentially, it is the same adventure, but I don't really know how else to describe this. The entire game just feels slower. Going through your options in battle takes a little bit longer, loading times to get into the battles takes a little bit longer, the game runs at half the original frame rate. Individually, these things may not seem like that big of a deal, but man, that time definitely adds up. It all just feels so sluggish by comparison. If you play it on its own, it's probably fine, but I played both of these back to back, and the remake is simply not as fun to control. And I would say the frame rate plays a big part in that. Not only did the original run at 60 FPS, but so did the remake of Superstar Saga. I was fine accepting no 3D in that one for the sake of having a smooth frame rate, but here, we have no 3D plus a worse frame rate. Also, while I did say that I liked how Superstar Saga looked on the 3DS, I actually don't share that opinion with Bowser's Inside Story. That game oozed charm from every orifice imaginable, including Bowser's... oh no. But here, I don't know man, it's something about Bowser's design, it just doesn't click with me. I don't think the comedic moments come off as entertaining as they did before when they were initially delivered by a pixelated meatball. But I get it, it's totally subjective, at least now we get to see Toads being fat in 3D, so hey, that's pretty cool. Also, there's new title screen music and there's no water to mess around with. How dare you! There is a large list of minor changes made to this version of the game, and some, like having a map on screen at all times, does make a stronger impact than others, but with how good the original still is, I think you're better off playing that version instead. Also, they censored Luigi's striped socks in the artwork, and I, for one, am completely outraged. Hashtag bring back Luigi's socks. Wait a second. Mario's right foot is also slightly larger in the 3DS art. I know it's not a big deal by any stretch of the imagination, but that makes the change all the more confusing. Oh, I'll get to the bottom of this one day, you have my word. From what I can gather, people seem to share my opinions here. Bowser's Inside Story for the DS was a massive success, one of, if not the, best-selling RPG in the Mario franchise. Bowser's Inside Story plus Bowser Jr.'s Journey for the 3DS is one of the worst-selling games in the entire Mario franchise, right alongside Mario's Tennis on Virtual Boy. My god, that game had Donkey Kong Jr. in it. I don't know how that one didn't sell well. It is crazy to me that essentially the same game breaks two different sales records on completely opposite sides of the spectrum. Regardless of the poor sales, it's not a bad game, but definitely an unnecessary one. It's still good because the original is also still good. Before its release, Alpha Dream stated that they remade Bowser's Inside Story instead of Partners in Time because they wanted to remake the best received title in the series, and they also wanted to further explore the parent-child dynamic of Bowser and Bowser Jr., which we got in Bowser Jr.'s Journey. Boy, would I hate to tell them that that is literally one of the plot points of Partners in Time. They also wanted to maintain the dual screen elements of the DS, which is why they opted to make this for the 3DS instead of the Switch. Even though a lot of these things could have probably been implemented down into one screen just fine. Now, I don't know about you, but those reasons, or some could say excuses, seem a bit weird. The sales were bad, the existence of the game simply confused people, the answers the developers gave to the questions just seemed very, very weird. Honestly, that combined with the average reviews that their last original game, Paper Jam, got, which we'll get to in the future, don't worry, It honestly didn't really come as much of a surprise to me that soon after Bowser's Inside Story on 3DS released, Alpha Dream would file for bankruptcy. They made a lot of weird decisions. The original Bowser's Inside Story is still amazing. Let's not end things on a down note here. Play this game. It is incredible, easily my favorite in the series. It may not be as replayable as Superstar Saga since it's longer and there's a lot more stuff going on, but it is definitely a more fulfilling experience. And it makes the idea of getting a sequel on newer hardware sound oh so exciting. Unlike Partners in Time, this game never got ported to the Wii U Virtual Console, which is upsetting. So the question then is, what if you don't have a DS and only a 3DS? Then yeah, still play the original, it works on a 3DS just fine. What are you doing? Why was there a 3DS version? So with all that being said, next up on the pipeline is Mario & Luigi Dream Team, a game that heavily focuses on Luigi. So I'm going to take this time to practice my Luigi impersonation. I have a line that I want to practice with real quick. Let me go ahead and oh, I am so screwed.